all for being here. Welcome to the Joint Redistricting Committee. How about this? Is that better? Yay, okay. Welcome to the Redistricting Committee of the Joint House and Senate meeting. We're glad that you're all here, and we are here to hear from you. First, I want to introduce our Sergeant at Arms and thank them for being here. From the Senate side, we have Rod Fuller. Thank you, sir. And the House Sergeant at Arms is Thomas Terry. He's outside. Thank you both for being here and taking care of us. We appreciate your service to the committee very much. And I am Senator Joyce Kravick. I represent Forsyth and Davie County, just down the road. And I'm going to introduce my colleagues here with me. We have Representative Wesley Harris from Mecklenburg, Senator Natasha Marcus from Mecklenburg, hi, everybody. Representative Jeff McNeely from Iredell, your hometown boy, and Senator Vicki Sawyer represents Iredell and Yadkin, and Senator Harry Warren from Rowan County. Did I call you Senator? He's a dear friend. He's so close. I think he is definitely a good friend. Representative Harry Warren from Rowan County. Thank you all for being here. And we are here to hear from each of you. We are anxious to hear what you have to say. And I also want to let you know that we do have a website. This is being recorded, so you can go back and take it in as you wish and listen to the questions again when we're finished. But we're going to go through the list of those who signed up online, and then we'll go through those who signed up here today. So welcome to all of you. And our first speaker is John Lingle. And each speaker will have 2 minutes. And thank you, Mr. Lingle, for being here. Thank
you. Good afternoon. My name is John Lingle. I've been a resident of Davidson, North Carolina for the last 21 years. I'm retired, but have spent the last 4 years working with various groups fighting for fairer elections. I'm here to urge the committee to make this redistricting process more transparent and inclusive. The 2011 redistricting process had many flaws that cost North Carolina citizens national prestige and more than $10 million in litigation, most of which the state lost. Improving the process this round will result in fairer maps and better use of tax dollars. All North Carolinians need a reasonable chance to participate. That requires more public hearings and virtual access for immunocompromised individuals. In 2011, there were 63 public hearings, but only 14 this round. Only one inconveniently scheduled meeting is set for comments about draft maps. This is clearly discriminatory, perhaps with surgical precision, as it will be much more difficult for frontline workers to participate at such an inconvenient hour during their workday. Allowing public comments only in the absence of draft maps clearly reflects an unfair, non-inclusive, and secretive process. It may be too late to fix the confusion surrounding the 13 meetings with their late notifications, conflicting addresses on the legislative website, and no virtual access. It's not too late to schedule more meetings to allow public comments on draft maps. In conclusion, please make this process more transparent, inclusive, and fair so we don't spend millions of our tax dollars on excessive litigation this round.
Thank you, Mr. Lingle. Thank you very much. Next, we have Arthur Zhu. Next, we have Craig Aderb. Joe Cloninger.
Committee members, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this afternoon, and I'd like to thank those members that are wearing masks to help conquer COVID. My name is Joe Cloninger. And I have lived in one of 3 towns, Davidson, Cornelius, or Huntersville, over the last 25 years, and currently I'm an unaffiliated voter. For over 20 years, I have worked for the Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools as a teacher, assistant principal, and principal. I'm a parent of 4 children and a grandparent to 6. In my days in education and now as a volunteer, I have always believed in doing what is right and best for all, meaning children and adults. I am here today to talk to you about the redistricting process and what is right and best for all citizens, and especially for our young people. I ask, number 1, that the redistricting process be transparent, because that is what is right and best for the citizens you represent. Number 2, I ask that the draft maps be available before these hearings. Number 3, I ask to schedule public hearings in the evenings after work hours. Number 4, I ask you to share the redistricting criteria online. Number 5, I ask you to provide the opportunity for virtual viewing and public testimony during pandemics, and to allow for 4-minute public testimony as done in Texas. Number 6, I ask you to offer at least 50 locations for the public hearings across our great state of North Carolina. Number 7, I ask you not to gerrymander. And number 8, I ask that the entire public hearing mapping process be transparent and be right and best for all. Thank you. Mike? Thank you for your service, and I look forward to your using all of our input demonstrating to us that this hearing was informative and not performative.
Thank you, Ms. Cloninger. Patricia Dumser. Patricia Dumser. And after Ms. Dumser will be Diane Hamby, so she can be prepared. We need a new mic, I do believe. Someone's coming to take care of the mic. Thank you for your patience. We could give her this one for now. Probably battery. It's working.
Should be okay? Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Patricia Dumser, and I've been a voter in Davidson and Cornelius for 23 years. I would like to thank you all for your service to the state and for giving us the opportunity as citizens to have input in these hearings. I agree with other people who indicate many points about concerns about access and transparency regarding the hearings themselves. But I would prefer to use my time to speak to you from the heart and appeal to your better angels, as Lincoln would say.
Thank you, Ms. Dumser. Ms. Hamby will take just a minute because that mic wants to work part of the time, but not all of the time.
Waiting for a governor's signature. So we just share a mic.
We could. Well, this it's got a cord. I don't think it'll go that far. We'd have to pass it back and forth. He's getting us one.
You might as well stay down here.
Yeah. Now it's working. While we're waiting for the mic, I want to recognize our addition to our panel. Senator Joyce Waddell from Mecklenburg County has joined us. Thank you, Senator Waddell, for being here.
Thank you for having these hearings. I am Diane Hamby. I've worn many hats in this community. So let me just address a few things. I had wished that you would have some sort of maps, either current or proposed, so people would understand why you're having these hearings. So there's just some things I want you to consider. Don't divide precincts. Don't divide municipalities when you draw the maps. Don't divide counties. I have lived where I have lived for a long time, and I have been in 4 congressional districts. In Iredell County, on election day, the poll workers have 34 different ballots to handle. I want you all to understand what a nightmare that is when we try to find poll workers. And when people get the wrong ballot, they get very angry, and they don't understand that you have 34 different stacks, especially in early voting. It is really important when you draw these maps. The notion of politicians picking their voters has got to stop. All of us want fair maps and fair elections and true choices. We don't want somebody sitting, well, I know this block will vote for me and this block will vote for me, so let's put him in my district. That's got to stop, folks. I think people all across this country are tired of it. We want honest, fair elections and fair maps, and we hope that at some time you will post some ideas so we know what we're talking about. And again, thank you for having these, because I don't ever remember a redistrict hearing in Iredell County. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hamby. Next, we have Todd Scott, and following Todd will be Lisa Moser. Welcome, Mr. Scott.
Hello, thank y'all for coming to Iredell. My name is Todd Scott. I'm the president of the Statesville NAACP. First off, I'd like to say that both parties have done this redistricting the wrong way at certain times. One party took it to a different level. After the maps come out, we need hearings to discuss the maps, proper time. Last time we had one of these, I had to go to Lenore, and they brought the maps out like it was after midnight, so we had no time to look at the maps when we was up there for the meeting. The NAACP believes race needs to be a part of this criteria. We don't want any partisan data, like if you're a Democrat, and we know most African Americans vote Democrat, so you go through that whole area of a place and just pick, make that a partisan area. We don't want to pack any districts. Don't split up the counties in 3 or 4 districts.
Thank you.
People in our communities and neighborhoods have the same policy needs and need to be together. Keep neighborhoods and interests together. It's critical for those who are regularly left out, just like we have food deserts here. So we want everybody to have a voice and just not one side of the town or one side of the district. We want everybody to have their fair shake and I agree on with what a lot of people said here today, and hope y'all can come back again next time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Lisa Moser, and she will be followed by Douglas Reed.
Good afternoon, Representative, Senator. I want to put a face on the concern that without the proper representation for our community, we want the concern for our community to be there. Just because something is done, legislation passed, doesn't make it right. It might be legal. On the way over here tonight, I heard two women talking about how wonderful the campus is, and I think everybody can agree it's so nice to walk across the campus of Mitchell. But you know, there was a time when my mother would have loved to have gone to this college, and it wasn't legal for my mother to do so. Also, you might remember Representative McNeely, we had a conversation not too long ago about how beautiful downtown is. You know, many of the buildings here in downtown Statesville are over 100 years old. It's a very historic, you know, several hundred years old when we look at the entire community. We're an old community. We're a proud community. We used to call ourselves the City of Progress. Do you remember that? Well, let me just tell you that less than a mile from the downtown beautiful clean area is my old neighborhood that I grew up in as a child. And it looks like a third world. You can't get sidewalks fixed. There's no curbing, no retainer walls. When we talk about legal representation, let it be fair. Thank you.
Thank you. Douglas Reed. Is Douglas here? Next will be Charles Quivy. Charles Quivy is not here. Next will be Deborah Mcgivern. And following Deborah will be Brian Duncan.
See if I can stretch up. You know, I'm very tall. Thank you. Thank you. I'm Deb Mcgivern. I'm president of the League of Women Voters of Catawba Valley. So I'm from Catawba County, which borders Iredell County. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. The North Carolina Constitution states all persons are created equal. I want all votes to be created equal. We ask for a transparent process, like many of those that have spoken before, that includes meaningful input from the public both before and after draft maps are drawn. While we appreciate this public hearing, the number and coverage for our state is not enough. Where are the virtual meetings? Where are the meetings post-draft maps? One meeting in Raleigh does not constitute public input. This past decade has seen North Carolina make the news in redistricting in ways that we should all be embarrassed by. Transparency in the redistricting process is a low bar to meet, yet it was a challenge. Public comments submitted through the portal should be available to all. Communities should not be divided. Partisan data or knowledge of how people vote has no place in drawing district lines. Predetermined elections do not help our communities or our state. Our state is fortunate. We're growing. We have an additional U.S. representative, which means redistricting is broad. It's a big deal to redistrict and add a district. North Carolinians deserve to have their voices heard through input into the maps, map drawing, and an outcome that results in fair elections. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. McGivern. Brian Duncan, and following Mr. Duncan will be Robert Nim.
Hi, Hi, good afternoon, and thank you for allowing me an opportunity to speak. I'm Brian Duncan. I'm Executive Director of iCare Incorporated, which is the local community action agency here in Statesville, but we serve Iredell, Lincoln, Catawba, and Alexander counties as well. So as an agency purposed with speaking on behalf of those who have lost their voices or been disenfranchised, I just felt compelled to speak today. You know, redistricting is a very critical process that should be void of politics. When done fairly, district lines are redrawn to reflect population changes and racial diversity. In 2018, there were 4 states where the party that won less than half the votes won more than half the seats. That was the obvious result of gerrymandering. According to my research, North Carolina was one of those states. As a citizen of one of the most gerrymandered states in the country, I'm here today to voice opposition to any redistricting map that disparately impacts communities of color, low-income communities, or any vulnerable population for that matter. When maps are drawn unfairly, issues that matter most to the majority of citizens in the state are not prioritized. I'm here today to unequivocally request fairness. As a legislator, it is not your role to pick your constituents. It's the role of constituents to pick legislators. So the root of this problem is in the process. Our current process is really a fox in the henhouse exercise with little regard for fairness. This process clearly needs to be changed to one where independent experts redraw district lines based on fairness. In the current process, as I close, I do want to remind you and the public of the rules that require adherence to the Voting Rights Act and constitutional rules on race, and that extreme partisan gerrymandering is prohibited. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Robert Nem, Scott Huffman, and following Mr. Huffman will be Tom Watson. Welcome, Mr. Huffman.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Scott Huffman, and I'm running to represent North Carolina's 13th Congressional District. The right to have one's voice heard is one of the most fundamental rights held by the American people. Many have made great sacrifices in order to protect it, including my family and I, who have given over 150 years of military service defending our Constitution in North Carolina. Unfortunately, elected Republicans continue to disregard these sacrifices by drawing gerrymandered maps. Former State Representative David Lewis once said, "I propose that we draw the maps to give a partisan advantage to 10 Republicans and 3 Democrats, because I do not believe it's possible to draw a map with 11 Republicans and 2 Democrats. That takes some brass. Our democracy should not be a game played by people who only believe in cheating to win. Governance means holding responsibility for the well-being of one's fellow American, not stealing power from the people. Politicians shouldn't be choosing politicians for the voters. Voters should choose who they want. This shouldn't be a partisan issue. We need elections that people can trust and feel confident about. Ted Budd was my opponent during the 2020 election cycle, and he voted against certifying the presidential results because of the big lie. Yet he accepted his gerrymandered results that gave him a 3rd term. Cramming people of color into one district when they should have 2 is a deliberate and racist action which dilutes the voices of Americans who deserve equal say. It hurts all of us. Look, I'm not naive. I hate to disappoint everyone who is here today. These hearings are for show. Elected Republicans have already drawn the maps in a back room without the people having input. However, let me say this to each of you. I am still hopeful that you will do the right thing for our state, our country, and draw fair maps not for the politicians, but for the people who grant you the power to govern for us. Look, we also need to stop acting like the pandemic is over. Every 43 seconds, an American dies from COVID. Wear a mask and get vaccinated.
Tom Watson. And following Mr. Watson will be Reverend Marcus Williams.
My name is Tom Watson. I moved to Davidson in 2014 together with my wife to start the Cedars Davidson Bed and Breakfast. We operated this traditional bed and breakfast successfully in Davidson until age and COVID persuaded us to retire in 2020. But before we moved to Davidson, we lived in the University City area of Charlotte, and when we moved here, we retained many ties to Charlotte, Cornelius, and Huntersville. We are members of St. Mark's Episcopal Church in Huntersville, where my wife is very active in the Flying Lions Culinary Ministry, a program that teaches commercial kitchen skills to people in need of employment. I serve on the Board of Trustees of Historic Rosedale, a Federalist-era house situated on 8 acres of woods and gardens on North Tryon Street in Charlotte. Like any older person, my wife and I have various medical needs, and most of our doctors are in Huntersville. Thus, our shopping, church, social, and charitable connections all face towards Davidson, Cornelius, Huntersville, and ultimately Charlotte. These towns and cities define our community of interest. It only makes sense to us to remain within a Mecklenburg County political district. Please do not cut our political ties with the rest of the county. I wish I could make specific suggestions or criticisms for your consideration, but the redistricting criteria are opaque and a draft map has not been presented. All I can do is urge you to keep Davidson within a district that includes Cornelius, Huntersville, and the rest of Mecklenburg County, to act to protect all persons and groups fairly, and to work transparently so that all can see and understand the process you followed to reach your decisions.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Reverend Marcus Williams. Crystal Guindo. Beth Kendall. And following Ms. Kendall will be Elaine Hewitt.
Hi, I'm Beth Kendall. I live in Davidson here in Iredell County. I want to thank you for taking time to go across the state and really listen to our voters from our communities. We should all be able to agree that our democracy is stronger when voters are engaged, and our politicians are much better when voters hold them accountable. That becomes increasingly difficult when you're in a different voting district than your neighbor. For example, let's say Rhonda, a voter in precinct Statesville 6, who incidentally lives in Statesville Ward number 3, talks to her up the street neighbor John, who's also in Statesville Ward number 3, but precinct Statesville 3. Their kids play together, they go to the same school, they all go to the same church, but they're in 2 different NC State House districts. Let's say that both are really concerned about the lack of good quality affordable housing in their area, and they want to act. It's a lot harder for Rhonda and John to organize to put pressure on their reps. They're having to talk to 2 different staffs, go through 2 different processes. They have to identify which of their neighbors is in which rep's district, and then on top of all that, their voices are diluted because they have several neighbors. Although they have several neighbors organized, they make up 2 different districts and are a much smaller percentage of each rep's constituents. Communities, neighborhoods, and municipalities should be kept whole. Also, districts should not look like snakes or ducks or earmuffs. North Carolina is very close to a 50-50 state, so no way should 8 of 13 representatives be from one party. Representatives shouldn't get to choose their voters. Not only is that not the way democracy should work, it makes any party weaker. If an elected Democrat or Republican is always going to win a district because of the way it's drawn, they don't even try to reach out to the other side. Their only fear is someone farther to the extreme than them. That doesn't bode well for working together, and it doesn't make our state or our country stronger. It leads to cults of personality, divisiveness, and wasting time arguing about wedge issues instead of actually making people's lives better. Voters lose their power, and that's not democracy.
Thank you, Ms. Kendall. Elaine Hewitt, and following Ms. Hewitt is Sergio Fernandez.
Hi, I'm Elaine Hewitt from Rowan County. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to the Redistricting Joint Committee. First, I know that the legislature has numerical rules beyond their control that they have to follow. If possible, please have no precinct that is split during redistricting, and if possible, no counties that are split. Second, I want to thank the legislature for the 2011 redistricting work. I lived in the Democratic legislature's drawing District 12 when it snaked down Interstate 85. The position was filled by Representative Mel Watts. That District 12 was the definition of gerrymander. Third, as a citizen, it is sad to me that no matter what the Republican legislature proposes, the opposition will file lawsuits. The liberal court mandated redistricting that created the current District 13 for the 2016 election led to an out-of-cycle special primary. To me, the last-minute second primary on a date voters were unaccustomed to created significant confusion among voters and was a form of vote suppression. The Democrat Party claims that voter photo ID suppressed the vote, but they give no evidence that any specific vote has been suppressed. They ask for specific vote court cases to back up voter fraud, but they offer no court cases where specific people have had their votes suppressed. Again, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I wish the North Carolina legislature the best in their redistricting efforts.
Thank you, Ms. Hewitt. Sergio Fernandez. Jeffrey Hoy. And following Mr. Hoy is Rosanna McDonald.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeffrey Hoy, and I am the chairperson of the Rowan County Democratic Party. My hope is that you would share my goal of each district having enough demographic diversity so that in competitive campaigns we would have a vigorous, healthy debate of issues, strengthening our democracy. Specifically, I would ask that, number one, you draw district lines, maintaining precincts without splitting them up, and maintaining counties, if at all possible, as well. I agree with my Republican friend, Elaine Hewitt, who just said the same thing, which is kind of fun. And number two, that the next step in this process be conducted in a transparent manner, observable by all the citizens of North Carolina. Three, that the proposed new maps be presented soon enough for public comment and input. My bottom line goal would be to have elected representatives in North Carolina reflect the overall balance of the electorate as evidenced by the election of both Republicans and Democrats at the statewide level in the last election. I thank you very much and best wishes in your process.
Thank you, Mr. Hoy. Rosanna McDonald, and following Ms. McDonald is Lisa Jewell.
Good afternoon, everyone who's here on behalf of Drawing Fair Maps. My name is Rosanna McDonald. I'm from the city of Lenoir in Caldwell County. I'm the vice president of the Caldwell County NAACP, and I'm here to represent the interests of minority voters. Redistricting is essential to voting rights and electoral representation for historically underrepresented groups. It's extremely important that transparent process is conducted that values all communities' interests. It's also important that the General Assembly complies with the Voting Rights Act and other laws in the process. Between 2010 and 2020, federal courts found that North Carolina's redistricting plans discriminated against voters of color by diluting minority votes. The General Assembly failed to include the consideration of the history of discrimination in North Carolina which is necessary to ensure compliance with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. I strongly oppose the exclusion of the history of discrimination in the redistricting criteria. I urge the General Assembly to consider the history of discrimination in voting and redistricting, so the General Assembly does not again violate Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Redistricting needs to be about equal votes, equal voices, and giving all communities equal voices, not about politicians. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McDonald. Lisa Jewell, and following Ms. Jewell is David Parker.
Good afternoon. I'm Lisa Jewell, and I'm the chair of Democratic Precinct 127 in Davidson. I've been a resident in Davidson for 13 years. My husband and I have raised our daughter there and sent her to public Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools. We both work in Davidson and in Charlotte. Living in Davidson is a blessing with its quaint downtown and friendly neighborhoods. Davidson is a unique blend of people, with Davidson College students, families who've lived there for generations, and people like me who hail from different places across the country. We've always considered ourselves part of the North Charlotte area of Mecklenburg County that includes Huntersville, Cornelius, and Davidson. That is where we center our lives around. That is where we dine, shop, and use our tax dollars. Driving our exits 23 to 30 is how we go about our day. Keeping our district reflecting how we live is vital to us. Redistricting without a fair reflection of how communities function and gather is moving from representation of the people to politicians moving to represent their own interests. I urge you to make the process of redistricting more transparent, more inclusive, and fair. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jewell. David Parker, and Mr. Parker will be followed by Lynn Puma.
Good afternoon. I'm David Parker. I'm the former chairman of the North Carolina Democratic Party, but I come today to commend the Republicans among you for being so honest about your objectives and your goals in this redistricting and election law revision process, in stating that your goal is to protect the incumbents. But I don't think that that's what we had in mind as a country. The hallmarks of protecting incumbents are fairly simple: the conserving and protection of the wealth and power for the few against the many, the use of redistricting and election laws to reduce the meaningful vote of many of the citizens, using rhetoric to inflame good, honest, decent people, concealing facts such as maps in order to make it impossible for people to respond intelligently. The Republican majority in the General Assembly is proudly, loudly, honestly, and vigorously championing protecting their own power. How are you doing this? It's redistricting of the incumbents, by the incumbents, and for the incumbents. That's directly contrary to our Declaration of Independence and our North Carolina Constitution. I commend you for being so open about it, though. You're very open about the fact that you want to make it harder to meaningfully vote for the poor and easier to cheat for the wealthy. Hundreds of millions of dollars are poured into your campaigns in order to maintain your power. You appeal to the founding fathers who made enslaved people only worth 3/5 of a person and didn't give them the right to vote. So what are you doing? You're disenfranchising those same folks. Your appeals to racism. The Republican Party proudly maintains symbols of Republican disenfranchisement that have gone over 100 years and in both parties, but you want to maintain those. So I commend you for being forthright. But this is tyranny, and this is madness. And I believe it is. And I do believe that the time is up for this kind of abuse of the democratic rule. Thank you.
Lynn Puma. And following Ms. Puma will be Henrietta Whitty.
Good afternoon. Okay. Hi there. Thank you. I do not have a title except for busy mom of 3 kids. But I felt it in my heart to come speak today to you all to remind you that North Carolina has become a textbook of what not to do when it comes to voter suppression in the U.S. We have a stain on our flag because of the things that have continued to go on to suppress voters, people of color. This is ground zero for gerrymandering, voter restrictions, ID, limiting voting sites, limiting the time frame. What that does is limit the people who can have access to what they need to have a voice. North Carolina, we have the most recent documented voter fraud case in the country, right here, going all the way back to the Wilmington Massacre. Voter suppression has been going on in this state since it existed. So as a resident of Iredell County who work and commute to Mecklenburg every day, please consider including our district with other districts outlying other counties who may have large populations commuting into Mecklenburg or other large cities. Currently, we are districted with Surry and Stokes County. And in Iredell County, where I live, right outside of Davidson, we don't have the same issues, the same needs. I need whoever represents me needs to understand the area which I live, including infrastructure, roads, transit, light rail, my environmental concerns like Norman, and land development around me. I need that representative to understand where I live. So I ask you, I implore you to dig inside yourself, examine your values and integrity when it comes to drawing these maps. Make them fair and make the process transparent. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Puma. Henrietta Whitty. Before we start on the speakers, oh, sorry, is that Ms. Whitty? No? Before we start on the speaker sheet that has signed up today, is there anyone here who signed up online that we have not called? There are some registrants on here that don't really have a name. So I think we got everybody who signed up online. Okay, thank you. The first name on our speaker sheet for today is James Mallory. And following Mr. Mallory is Doris Allison.
James Mallory. I'm the chairman of the Iredell County Board of Commissioners, and I want to thank the Joint Committee for taking the time to hit the road and get some feedback from citizens. From the county perspective, I'll just say that maintaining political subdivisions is an important deliverable in your process. It's been talked about precincts being split, the difficulties that presents to our Board of Elections in terms of administering the election, and the confusion that engenders among voters as to who this year is their representative. Finally, you've been given, you've got a number of different squares to circle and circles to square as far as guidance from different entities, whether it's federal or state, the Constitution, or the courts. And the most recent court decisions from the 3-judge panel laid out some markers, and
I'd say whatever you do and however you do it, let's try to avoid litigation for the next 10 years. And because that just brings pain to the whole process and brings the process into disrepute. And what we have today is a significant amount of distrust and mistrust by voters about the electoral process itself, and we don't need that. We have a very efficient and effective and accurate process, but perceptions can create realities all their own. People have spoken about gerrymandering and all that. We know it's a political process, and you can't take politics out of redistricting. It just is what it is. There was a Supreme Court justice in the 60s that was wrestling with the definition of pornography. And he said, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. And so when you sit back at the conclusion of having maps presented to you, just take a quick look, and if it looks wrong, it probably is. So thank you for your service and your commitment to the people of North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Mallory. Doris Allison, and following Miss Allison is Keaton Brower.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Doris Allison. I'm Councilwoman Allison of Ward 3. Ward 3 is one of the largest ward within our community, within our city. But we're also diverse. We're the most diverse. Our houses range from 85,000 up to 400 and maybe 400,000. We now are experiencing the fact that we're having houses built in our community. And Larkins will be having an inclusive of maybe 400 housings with Larkins and also with Wallace Spring Road in the future. The rezoning that you all are embarking upon affects all of us, especially my community. We have been a food desert for over 20 years. And the only stores that we have is provided by Statesville Housing Authority, which is Family Dollar and Dollar General. We have no sidewalks. But what I'm saying to you, as a representative, when you took your oath, it should have been for the greater good of the people. And I hope it's not for your future reelection. But I can't be concerned about that right now because I have a community that wants to be divided, and we cannot afford to be divided. We need this rezone to be fair and transparent. Because if you take out what we need, then we're going to be a desert again. And we refuse to be that way. And it's not going to be about the color of one's skin or politics, being a Republican or Democrat. You're going to have people coming together, being able to say enough is enough. And we will not stop until you understand we're the people, for the people, and by the people. Because we have a right. And I say we, I'm saying we is in poverty and prosperity. So when you sit down and you leave from here, remember Ward 3, because we will remember you.
Thank you, Miss Allison. Keaton Brower is next, and following Mr. Brower is Helen Chestnut.
Hello, my name is Keaton Brower. I'm a young grassroots organizer, theater artist, filmmaker, currently working for Scott Huffman for North Carolina, who spoke earlier, working to flip the 13th district. I've been a young organizer off and on for the last 10 years. And one of my big passions is driving up young people to vote, even people who I know are voting differently than me. It brings me joy when I see someone of my generation participating in our democracy, because we're the ones who are going to inherit it. And the most disheartening thing in my time has been other young people telling me it doesn't matter, the maps are rigged anyway. And they point out Asheville and it's cracked like a walnut. And it's obvious to anyone with a mind to see what's being done there. It's not right, and I know that the people who are doing it know that it's not right. And it's especially saddening when I think of all the sacrifices people have made, from the Revolutionary War to the Civil War to World War II to the Civil Rights Movement for that right. And when their daughters, sons, grandchildren inherit it, they don't believe in it because the maps are rigged. And unfortunately, these days, I see the General Assembly doing the exact same things it did 10 years ago. And it just hardens my resolve. And I hope that those who are fighting for fair maps will keep fighting no matter what happens, and we're going to see a better democracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brower. Helen Chestnut, and Ms. Chestnut will be followed by Karen Parker.
Good evening to the committee. First, I want to say thank you for having this hearing, giving us a chance to speak. My name is Helen Parker Chestnut. I'm a retiree from GE for 26 years, of which 21 was in management, and I retired from the state of North Carolina, Department of Juvenile Justice, and the Department of Agriculture. I served as an administrative officer. I have been a lifetime resident of Alexander County. I was born and lived most of my life, except for the 11 years I worked in Raleigh. In 2014, I retired again and returned home. Since then, I have been very active in the community. The Democrat Party, Vice President of our NAACP, the 957 Mobile Cafe, we feed the homeless, also the Western Piedmont Council of Government, the Hidden Center, and the Historic Preservation Committee for Alexander County. I am seeking and looking for something to help our young people to grow and be a part of. It was not easy as a black woman working for GE, being the first from the floor. It has not been easy trying to raise 3 children and go to college at the same time from Gardner-Webb to CVCC. Today, Alexander County only has a population of around 36,000 folks. That's what the census said in 2020, which was a 2% decline. We do not have a local hospital. We only have 1 high school, 2 middle schools, and 7 elementary schools. Because we are a small community, we have to work together, regardless to our party affiliation. But today I stand to say it has not been fair. It's not been fair as far as the districting of our precincts. There is not a chance for a minority to be elected. I ask that you would please consider being fair and transparent in this redistricting to make it fair to all. We do care. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chestnut. Karen Parker, and following Ms. Parker will be Fred Foster.
I got it, thank you. I'll leave my mask on, so pardon me if my voice is muffled, but I'm pretty sure the political system in North Carolina is designed specifically for that effect. I'm here to promote a proposed constitutional amendment creating an independent, citizen-led redistricting process. The process can be done using computer algorithms, easily creating fair districts. In the past 30 years, almost 40 lawsuits have been pressed over districting in North Carolina. These are routinely settled using millions of taxpayer money because we are one of the most gerrymandered districts or states in the nation. Both parties have had their turn in power and both engaged in gerrymandering when it was their turn to redraw the maps. Each party cries for reform when it is in power, but when it is out of power, but not when it is running the show and has the power to make change. Gerrymandering means some votes count less. In North Carolina, it takes 3 Democrat votes to elect a House member for every 1 Republican vote. It's almost like voting Democrat makes you 1/3 of a person in the eyes of law. That seems to be a considerable step down from previous legal views on the subject. Last century, I was first registered to vote unaffiliated. To this day, I am still unaffiliated because I vote for policy, not party, not people. More voters in North Carolina are making the same choice. Republican political consultant Paul Shoemaker from North Carolina said recently, "I actually believe next year will be the first time in the history of this state, that unaffiliated voters will outnumber Democrats and Republicans by the November 2022 midterm elections. This creates a bizarre situation where an unaffiliated voter may vote a split ticket and have a portion of their votes carry 3 times the weight than the rest of their vote. In practice, it means one specific group of voters has more representation than another, effectively nullifying the greater will of the people. The founding of our country began with a kerfuffle over an idea which included the slogan, 'No taxation without representation.' Thank you, sir. In an ideal world, this would still be true, and unequal representation by ending gerrymandering. Thank you."
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Fred Foster, and following Mr. Foster is Skip McCall.
Hello, my name is Frederick Foster. I am a councilman for the city of Statesville, representing Ward 6. Today, I ask that y'all be more transparent. As a council member, I believe in transparency. I believe in keeping my constituents informed. I personally try to do community meetings and post stuff on Facebook to keep my constituents informed. And today, I was not able to allow my constituents to be informed to be here so they could have a voice and opinion in this matter. I understand things can't go your way all the time, but this could have been set up a lot better. And I also feel that you should have media here, more media, TV media, to cover this for ones that are not able to come. Right now, I'm doing a Facebook Live so my constituents can see what's going on. All I ask is more transparency so people know what's going on. A lot of people don't trust us no more. A lot of people don't trust government. I hate to say it. They don't trust me, but I'm not a politician. I'm just a concerned citizen that ran and that cares about his community. All I ask is be more transparent, let people know what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Skip McCall, and following Mr. McCall is John Allen.
My name is Skip McCall, and I want to thank you for allowing us to have this hearing. I'm a former school board member, a former president of the Statesville branch NAACP, and I'm also a Vietnam veteran. A gerrymander is defined as a manipulation of the boundaries of an electoral constituency so as to favor one party or class. In other words, a gerrymander involves a purposeful effort to skew the system to the advantage of one party, group, or interest. Following the election of Barack Obama, the Republicans took gerrymandering to a whole new level, utilizing the technology that we have today. And that technology has enabled the Republicans to take gerrymandering all the way to the White House, to the Senate, to Congress, and certainly work elections in their favor. Gerrymandering is really, to me, unlawful and unconstitutional. However, I was disappointed that the Supreme Court did not deal with the issue when they had the opportunity. So I think that we must deal with this issue during redistricting. We must, if we're talking about fairness, talking about transparency and all of those good things about redistricting, the first thing that we have to do is deal with gerrymandering. And the best way to deal with it is to eliminate it completely. Because we cannot and will not have fair elections, honest elections, until gerrymandering is eliminated and partisan politics is eliminated from redistricting and from voting in not only this state, but throughout America. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCall. John Allen, and following Mr. Allen is Kay Ritchie.
Good afternoon. As a farmer in Harmony and longtime community member, I know it's important to Iredell County to remain as intact as possible. These last drawings of the legislature have been more productive for Iredell residents since we actually have Iredell residents that represent us. We have rarely been able to know our representatives very long since Eric Holder, former Attorney General, continues to sue until he gets his way. This is a disservice to all voters. We need continuity and stability in who represents us and what district we live in. Constantly redrawing over lawsuits by people that are outside North Carolina is unreasonable. One party drew lines for over 100 years and gerrymandered, always. But there were no complaints then. Why is it only under a different party control for only 10 years are we now sued every year by outside interest groups from outside the state? People basically district themselves based on where they choose to work and live. The results from the last election did not change who won. Let's stop the frivolous lawsuits by outside interest groups and keep our elected officials in charge, not random judges that are not given those powers to draw districts by our Constitution.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Kay Ritchie, and after Ms. Ritchie is Alejandro Garcia.
Kay Ritchie from Stokes County, full disclosure, where I'm chair of the Democratic Party there. I agree with the previous speaker that we need to stop frivolous lawsuits, and the way to stop frivolous lawsuits is to draw fair maps. In Stokes County as a whole county, we've been in the 5th district, we've been in the 6th district, now we're in the 10th district, which is why I drove an hour and a half to come to this panel meeting, because this is the congressional district that I'm in. We have been moved districts, you know, to change the vote, to add more, we're predominantly Republican county, add more Republican votes. In one instance, that was supposedly done by personal vendetta from a representative who wanted to not have an incumbent elected. If we have fair maps, we don't have to go through the constant judicial cases. If we have fair maps from the beginning, if we are transparent, if we keep communities together, don't divide in trying to protect incumbents or to oust incumbents, then we can go on and improve our country, our democracy, and work together to do so. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Ritchie. Alejandro Garcia.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to everybody here. My name is Alejandro Garcia. I'm actually coming from Alamance County. Had to drive almost 2 hours from here. I'm just here to highlight the need of fair and transparent maps, maybe possibly asking the community how to draw those maps. Fair and transparent maps are needed in order for communities of color to stop being segregated. As a Latino, I don't want to continue to see neighborhoods, bus stops, or schools segregated in order to fulfill elected officials' political agenda. And this is why I joined everybody in this group, in this room, to ask you to draw these districts so my kid, neighbors, and everybody else in my community have representatives who look like them and we're tired of having individuals in power who don't look like us or have our best interests in heart. I ask you to allow the public to help you draw these maps and have a before and after meeting for us to review and edit these maps as needed. Thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Those are all the names that we have signed up, but we are happy to listen to anyone who is here that did not sign up, that has something that you would like to say. You're welcome to come to the microphone and identify yourself and speak. No takers? Well, I want to remind you again, additional information is available at ncleg.gov and go to the committee page redistricting site. There's a wealth of information there. It's updated regularly, so if there are any updates that come out, you will know about them by checking there. There is an open portal that you can enter additional comments, and we thank you all so much for being here, and our meeting is adjourned.